What happens when one of Hollywood's most enduring legends walks onto a morning show expecting softball questions, only to be met with a completely different agenda? You're about to find out. This wasn't in the script. The setup was simple: a quick live interview, a little promotion for his latest film, In and Out. At 94, Clint Eastwood didn't make many TV appearances. So when Good Morning America announced he'd be live in studio, network executives were ecstatic. Producers had even prepared a glossy tribute reel. Dirty Harry, Unforgiven, Gran Torino, the works. Host George Stephanopoulos was given strict marching orders. Keep it light, stick to the film, maybe touch on Clint's directing process. Nothing more. When Eastwood stepped onto the set, the room fell silent. He moved with that same measured, unhurried gait that made him a cinematic icon, his presence filling the space. A nod to the crew, a slow adjustment of his jacket, and he lowered himself into the chair opposite Stephanopoulos, as though taking his mark in an old-fashioned standoff. "Good morning, Clint," Stephanopoulos said, beaming his anchor smile. "Morning," Clint replied, voice low and gravelly, face unreadable. The first few minutes rolled smoothly. Film talk, cast anecdotes, reflections on the themes. The kind of warm, nostalgic segment morning audiences expect. Then Stephanopoulos swerved. "Clint, you've seen Hollywood change. Some say it's become more socially conscious, more inclusive. What's your take on that shift?" A faint narrowing of Clint's eyes. Subtle, but telling. This wasn't part of the deal. "Well, George," he said slowly, "a good story's a good story, no matter who tells it. I've always believed in hiring the best person for the job." The Stephanopoulos nodded but pressed on. "But surely you recognize the industry had to change. There were deep systemic barriers that needed breaking. The air seemed to drop a few degrees." Clint leaned back, jaw set. "What I recognize," he said, "is that politics and agendas cloud storytelling. Movies should be about truth, not ticking boxes." The audience shifted in their seats. The crew hesitated, but Stephanopoulos pushed harder. "Isn't ignoring those issues also political? Isn't pretending representation doesn't matter its own statement?" "I'm not pretending anything," Clint said, voice low but steady. "If you stop telling stories and start making public service announcements, you strip the soul from the art." The tension was now thick enough to cut. "Some would say that's a privileged view," Stephanopoulos countered. "You've never had to fight for representation." That did it. Clint leaned in, eyes locked. "I grew up in the Great Depression, dug pools, worked steel mills. Nobody handed me anything. I didn't make it in this business because of who I was. I survived because I outworked everyone around me. But the industry wasn't equal. The industry," Clint cut in, "was brutal for everyone. You think I walked into studios and just got roles because I looked the part? I got turned down more times than I can count. I just didn't quit. The control room director hovered over the button to cut to commercial. Nobody moved. So, you don't think there were barriers?" Stephanopoulos asked. "There are always barriers," Clint said. "Life has them. You either complain or push through. But don't tell me storytelling's supposed to be therapy. It's supposed to be real. A long beat. I think you're missing the bigger picture," Stephanopoulos said, visibly rattled. "And I think you're missing what made movies matter in the first place." Eastwood replied, his voice a blade wrapped in calm. "They didn't try to fix the world," Clint said. "They just told the truth and let people feel something real." The studio was silent now, the air frigid. This was supposed to be a routine morning show segment. Instead, it had become a flashpoint, part interview, part trial, and soon to be a viral clip dissected, praised and condemned. Stephanopoulos didn't back off. If anything, Clint's composure seemed to provoke him. Each measured answer felt to George like defiance, its own kind of arrogance. He leaned in, voice tighter. "Surely you can admit your generation of filmmakers had advantages. The old boys club, exclusionary practices, Clint's eyes narrowed. My generation, he said, slow and deliberate. You mean the one that fought in World War II. The one that built the country you're sitting in, asking smug questions from a leather chair. No, George shot back. I mean the generation that dominated Hollywood while keeping women and minorities locked out. The room froze. This wasn't TV anymore. This was a knife fight. Clint's posture shifted, his silhouette suddenly resembling one of his weathered Western heroes' moments after spotting the traitor. George, he said quietly, you've got me confused with somebody else. I never kept anyone out. Didn't care about color or creed. If you could hold a camera and tell the truth, you got the job. Period. That's easy to say now, George replied. But the record speaks for itself. How many of your films had diverse casts? How many women directors did you fight for? Clint's grip tightened on the armrests. You want to talk about the record? I made films about what matters. Men under pressure, Americans in pain, people at the edge. I wasn't playing identity bingo. I was telling the damn truth, so diversity wasn't a priority. No, Clint said, his voice finally rising. Story was the priority. Always. But those stories came from one very specific worldview. The granite cracked. My worldview, Clint said, his tone hard as steel. You mean believing people should work hard, own up to their mistakes, and treat others with respect. That's your problem with me. George pressed. I mean the worldview of white, male, conservative America. Clint stood. The chair screeched back across the studio floor like a warning shot. You think Unforgiven was conservative. You think $1 Million Baby was flag-waving propaganda. Those are exceptions, George said, rattled. I'm talking about your overall body of work. Your message. You don't know a damn thing about my message. Clint shot back. I showed America. The real one. The one with scars, grit, and pain. You can't handle that, so you call it bias. Oh, George tried to pivot. Don't you think some of your films promote outdated ideas of masculinity? That violence solves problems. Clint leaned in, eyes locked. How about this stereotype? Anyone who doesn't parrot your politics is a racist, sexist, backwards redneck. You slap a label on them so you don't have to listen. I'm asking fair questions, George said, quieter now. No, Clint replied, deadly calm. You're setting a trap. You brought me here to talk about my new film. Instead, you put me on trial for being Clint Eastwood. In the control room, producers whispered frantic orders, but no one dared cut away. You think this is journalism. This is theater. You want a sound bite for your followers. Here's one. I've spent my life making movies that meant something. Not chasing trends. Not playing politics. You want a moment? Fine. Here's your moment. You're being overly sensitive, George tried. Clint laughed a cold, sharp bark. Kid. I've been called every name in the book by critics who actually knew what the hell they were talking about. But you sit there smug, thinking you're saving the world by grilling an old man about diversity quotas. That's not fair, George muttered. No, Clint said. What's not fair is pretending you care about cinema when all you want is content. He pointed at the camera. You want me to apologize for making films people still remember. Not happening. I didn't come here to play your game. And I'm not giving you a clip for Twitter. The air turned razor sharp. You invited me here, Clint said. Next time, be honest about what you're after. He turned, walking off set. The camera followed for a moment, then cut to black. I think you're misunderstanding my intentions, George called after him. Clint didn't even turn. Your intentions are crystal clear. You wanted me to be the villain in your little morality play. Congratulations, George. You got your confrontation. Hope it was worth it. George flinched, his composure cracking just enough to show the hit had landed. Maybe the real issue, Stephanopoulos said, leaning forward, is you can't handle questions about your legacy. Maybe you're just not used to someone pushing back against your outdated views. The words dropped like a gauntlet in the dust. Eastwood didn't flinch. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, sharp enough to cut glass. "Outdated views," he echoed. "Son, let me tell you something. I believe in treating people with dignity, no matter who they are. I believe respect is earned by action, not handed out like a prize for checking a box. I believe in telling stories that mean something to real people. If that makes me outdated, then hell, I'll wear the badge." The world's moved on. Stephanopoulos pressed. Beyond the simple moral codes your films rely on. Audiences today want more nuance, more complexity. Eastwood gave a short, bitter laugh. "Complexity? You're lecturing me on complexity. I made a film about a racist war vet who learned to look past his hate. I told the story of a woman fighter no one believed in. I've made films about grief, vengeance, justice, about the cost of violence and the price of redemption. But none of that matters to you, does it? Because I didn't sing the right political notes." "Those themes were secondary," Stephanopoulos said. "Your films still center a kind of masculine heroism a lot of people find problematic." Eastwood's eyes hardened. "Problematic. There's that bloody word again. Standing up for what's right, problematic. Taking responsibility, problematic. Protecting the people you love, apparently that's problematic too." The studio fell silent. The cameras hummed. "I'm not saying those values are wrong," Stephanopoulos offered, his tone betraying him. "I'm saying the way your films frame them tends to shut out other voices." "Other voices." Eastwood's voice rose. "George, I've worked with actors from every walk of life. Told stories from every corner. I didn't plaster diversity slogans on posters or give speeches about it. I just did the damn work. But because I didn't wave the flag, you think it doesn't count. But you must see how your influence shaped Hollywood in ways that weren't always positive," Stephanopoulos said. That broke something. Eastwood stood, his voice like rolling thunder. "My influence. I helped build a genre. I proved you could make films that were both commercial and meaningful. I told stories about people facing real choices. And yes, I made money. That's the business." He jabbed a finger toward the host. "I've employed thousands. Actors, writers, carpenters, set crews. I gave chances based on talent and grit, not checklists. I've built careers. I've built a legacy. And you sit behind a desk, talking about justice and representation, but you've never put your own money on the line. Never fought for a scene. Never bled for a story. So don't tell me about impact." The room was dead still. Eastwood leaned in. "You've never had to look a crew member in the eye and tell them the movie's dead and their job's gone. That's the problem. George, you think Hollywood's stuck because of people like me. Truth is, it's stuck because people like you think profit's a dirty word. Because too many put profits over principles." Stephanopoulos shot back. Eastwood's glare sharpened. "Without profit, there's no crew, no script, no story. You can have all the principles in the world, but if no one's watching, you're not changing anything. You're just talking to yourself." "But art should be more than commercial appeal," Stephanopoulos argued, almost pleading. "Art." Eastwood's voice dropped into a slow, dangerous drawl. "I've been making films longer than you've been breathing. Real films. Art that connects. Not the self-indulgent garbage that wins shiny trophies and puts audiences to sleep." He stood, the shift in the room almost physical. Stephanopoulos suddenly looked small under the lights. "We're getting off track." Stephanopoulos tried again, voice brittle. "I just wanted an honest conversation about your career and its impact." The Eastwood's laugh was dry, cutting, and without humor. "Honest. There's nothing honest about this setup. You dragged me here under false pretenses. The moment I wouldn't dance to your tune, you started swinging. That's not journalism, George. That's activism with a teleprompter." "I resent that," Stephanopoulos said stiffly, his voice tightening. "You can resent it all you want. Doesn't make it less true." Eastwood's gaze had gone cold, sharp as a rifle sight. You came in with your mind made up. All you wanted was a clip for social media, a neat little gotcha moment. You weren't here to listen. You were just waiting to be proven right. The silence in the studio was suffocating. Even the camera crew seemed frozen. "You're being unfair," Stephanopoulos muttered, though his tone betrayed him. "Unfair." Eastwood leaned in, his voice low but loaded. "I'll tell you what's unfair: inviting someone on to promote their work, then blindsiding them to score points. You didn't want answers. You wanted ammunition. And now I'm done." He calmly reached down and unclipped his mic with the slow precision of a man who'd done it 100 times. "Wet," Stephanopoulos blurted, a flicker of panic showing through. "We're not finished." "Oh, we're finished," Eastwood cut in, his voice final. "I didn't come here to be disrespected. I came to talk about films, about stories, about the work. Instead, I got lectured by someone who thinks a media job makes him wiser than 50 years in the trenches." He set the microphone on the chair beside him. The thud was sharp, echoing like a gunshot. Then he turned to the camera. "Folks," he said, steady and grave, "I came here to talk about storytelling. Why we make movies in the first place, to move people. But apparently, none of that matters unless I check the right political boxes. If that's where we're headed, maybe I really have made my last film." Stephanopoulos started to speak, but Eastwood's glance, cold, withering, and absolute, shut him down. "I've spent my life telling stories that mattered to real people," Eastwood went on. "If that's no longer enough, that's not my problem." And with that, 94 years old, unbent, unbroken, turned and walked off set. No last words, no backward glance. His footsteps echoed through the stunned silence until all that remained was an empty chair and a shaken host. Stephanopoulos sat frozen, red, faced under the studio lights. The camera still rolled, but the moment, his moment. Around him, the crew stood stiff, silent. No one moved. No one spoke. And as the dust settled, it became painfully clear, in trying to corner a Hollywood legend, George Stephanopoulos had only managed to dismantle himself.